Alright, you've all heard of the Apple tax, that premium you pay just to have a specific fruit at the back of your phone. It's kinda how people pay more for designer clothing brands. You know, all of those ones with those weird patterns that don't actually make the shirt look any more comfortable, they just make your wallet lighter. Yeah, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Truth be told, many of us Android users, we thought we were safe. But let's talk about the Samsung surcharge, paying crazy inflationary prices for small hardware changes. And there's nowhere better to really feel this than with the phones. This is the Galaxy A56, Samsung's top-of-the-line mid-range A-series phone, slotting right into what many would consider mid-range prices, priced at £499 for the 256GB version. And this is the Galaxy S25 Ultra, Samsung's top-of-the-line flagship monster with every feature they own, priced at about £1,249 at release for the same storage. It's a crazy price difference. But we're a bit different here at PocketSpec. I'm a deal searcher and I hunt for the best prices like it's a sport. By trading in some broken phones and stacking my healthcare discount as well as using cashback, I paid exactly £245 for this A56, and this is the 256GB version. And I paid about £700 for this S25 Ultra, and again I used the same method, stacking some healthcare discounts with some cashback as well as trading in a £5 phone I'd bought from eBay. Now I bet you're wondering, why is this guy making this video now? These phones have been out forever. Well, I've actually lived with both of these for the past year. And with the S26 series and the A57 coming out just in a few weeks, it's vital you know exactly what you're paying for before you throw your next paycheck at a pre-order button. Is the S25 Ultra, this monster right here, really worth 3 times more this A56? Let's find out. Alright, since you're watching a PocketSpec video, I'm going to focus on things you'll actually notice, not just boring benchmarks thrown in your face. First, let's talk about ergonomics. The Ultra might look like a literal tank. I mean, it's huge, it's boxy, and even though Samsung rounded the corners this year, it still digs into your palm when you're holding it. But Samsung managed to keep the weight down to just 219 grams, and that's only 7 grams more than this A56. Now the A56, it does feel less weighty in your hand and actually has a pretty nice glass black finish. And overall, it's quite a premium feeling phone. It's got a nice metal side rail here, and when you're holding it in your hand, it doesn't feel like it's a cheap or mid-range phone. It's not on the same level as the Ultra, which makes you feel as if you're holding a slab of titanium with a battery inside, but that doesn't mean the A56 is bad. It's definitely just as close as people think. It's definitely up there, and to me, this A56 actually feels more premium than my OnePlus 15, so it's definitely worth the money in my eyes. Either way, you're probably going to be putting a case on these phones. So, are you really going to notice what the frame material is made of? Probably not. Both phones have massive screens at 6.9 inches for the S25 Ultra and 6.7 inches for the A56, and as with almost any phone screen these days, both look great day to day. I mean, you can't really tell much of a difference when you're just looking at the UI. The A56 screen is beautiful and decently sharp, but we are talking 505 pixels per inch versus 385 pixels per inch. Unless you're a hawk, you're not going to notice that just moving the phone around in the general UI, but it's definitely noticeable. Opening up a file or a picture and you zoom in the same way, you can see that it is a bit more blurry here on the A56 in comparison to the S25 Ultra. It's not to say that the S25 Ultra is amazing because the file quality here isn't fantastic, but you know, something like this is where I can really show that there is a bit of a difference. When you do put the phone side by side, you can see that the S25 Ultra screen does get that little bit brighter. I mean, 1000 nits, it sounds like a massive difference, but remember, the way we see brightness is logarithmic, it's not a linear scale, so you can't really say that 1000 nits is that massive. It doesn't seem that massive, especially when the phones are in front of me right now, but it's definitely noticeable. Now the other thing to notice is that you can see that this screen is a lot more vivid than the A56 is. That's something that you will notice when you put the phone side by side, but overall the A56's viewing experience is just great, to be honest, as is most phone screens these days. I mean, even Apple with the iPhone 17 finally put the 120Hz panel in. So things are improving, and unless you're putting the phone side by side, you're probably not going to be noticing that difference. But what you probably might notice is the difference in the bezel sizes. I mean, it's not massive, but there is a few millimeter extra thickness on the bezels on the A56. And when we got the phone side by side like this, you can tell that the viewing experience in the S25 Ultra is just that little bit better. You've got that massive chin on the A56, but realistically, are most of you going to have a case on your phone? I mean, I'm caseless kind of guy, or very minimal cases, so I do notice that. But if you're going to have a thick and bulky protective case on your phone, you're probably not going to notice. And is a few extra millimeters really worth that extra £800? I mean, I don't think so, at least when it comes to phones, that is. But personally, I think the greatest feature on this new Galaxy S25 Ultra screen is the Gorilla Glass armor with its anti-reflective properties. I mean, it's the king of anti-reflection. Under bright light, it makes bright lights look like matte paintings. If I move this into the studio light, you can see that it's kind of diminishing how bright that light actually is. If I do the same thing with the A56, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys twice. Let me just try and get, yeah, there's the difference. You can see that the S25 Ultra is doing a massive and a great job really in reducing those reflections. But if you're living in a country like the UK, like I am, full of gloomy and crappy weather almost 90% of the year, it probably isn't going to make that much of a difference. But honestly, even inside and even in my clinic room, I do notice that I do have to keep the A56 on a slightly higher brightness than the S25 Ultra to get that same visual effect. Alright, since you're watching a doctor right now, at some point I have to talk health. So let's talk eyes and late night scrolling. The Ultra uses fancy LTPO tech, and I've got it on the lowest brightness right now for both phones. Both phones get very dim, but the PWM flicker frequency, it's still very low. It's in the few hundreds at the moment. If you get weird headaches at night, the Ultra might be the culprit. But the A56, it's actually worse here, about 250 Hz of PWM flicker. And staring at it at low brightness is like being at a strobe light party you didn't want to attend. Here, the Samsung surcharge actually pays for itself in eye health. But the A56 leaves you reaching for paracetamol by 10 o'clock. It's no bargain. Definitely consider this if you're sensitive to flicker. But again, reconsider even Samsung then, because you really need to be considering, you know, those Honor or Chinese manufacturers that go into the thousands with their eye health and PWM flicker frequencies. Alright, what annoyed me most about the Galaxy A56 was something that I didn't even realize at first when I bought the phone, and that was that it doesn't have an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. I mean, someone like me, you've been using ultrasonic fingerprint scanners for years now, and with the A56 you get an optical scanner. If your fingers are slightly grubby, slightly wet, you're just not going to get that same experience. And overall, even when they are clean, the S25 Ultra just scans and unlocks a little bit faster than the A56 and gives that smoother experience. So if I put them both side by side and scan my finger, probably notice that straight away. It's definitely quicker on the S25 Ultra, and if my fingers had that little bit of grime on them, you'd probably see me having to clean them off or readjust on the A56. That's not to say that the S25 Ultra has the best fingerprint scanner in the game. It definitely doesn't. I mean, the OnePlus 15 is almost instantaneous. It makes me feel as if, is this even scanning my finger? The S25 Ultra is definitely good enough. Alright, let's talk performance. When I saw that Exynos was back, I was stressed. I thought we're going back to the good old Android days of constant jitter and stutter. To be honest, the A56, it's pretty smooth. I've had no issues with it. Yeah, the S25 Ultra will load your apps that little bit faster in comparison. I mean, I've got a few apps here, and if I just go through them, you can see that pretty much every time the S25 Ultra will be that little bit faster. The A56, a little bit slower. Most of the time, just as fast as you can see there. Have I had that much of an issue? No. And I find it just as smooth, and honestly not an issue at all. If you're not looking for the sleekest and fastest phone, or something that minor milliseconds aren't going to make much of a difference to your day-to-day life, you're probably not going to notice it. But if you're using your phone for other things such as gaming, that's where you're going to notice a big difference between the phones. But let's get nerdy for a second, because the spec sheet is where that £800 gap really starts to hurt. The Ultra is packing that Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's using that UFS 4.0 storage compared to the A56's UFS 3.1. That's about twice as fast in its read and write speeds. What does that really mean in the real world? Well, if you're opening games such as Temple Run, which I'm going to open here on both phones, you can see that the S25 Ultra will probably load the game just that little bit faster. And we'll give it the time to really see what happens in real life. But yeah, as you can see here, the S25 Ultra, it is definitely faster in loading into games, and that's probably to do with how fast the storage is more than anything else. But when it comes to actual gaming and processing speed, don't be thinking you're going to run games smoothly like Wuthering Waves and PUBG on this phone. You're probably going to be stuck at around 60 Hz. If you're looking for high refresh rate gaming, definitely go for anything with a Snapdragon 8 Elite. I mean, you can go for Dimensity. There's some compatibility issues that I've heard from, but I don't have many of those phones to really be able to tell you much about them. I'm not much of a mobile gamer myself. I mean, I've got a 9070 XT, which is bigger than both of these phones combined, sitting right to my right now. And I'll definitely be leaning for my gaming PC if I need to game. If you're a mobile gamer, you already know, and you're probably not even going to be watching this video to begin with. Alright, battery life is a wash on both phones, to be honest. Both phones are rocking a 5000 mAh battery, and in my day-to-day use, both aren't going to last average users 2 days. The max I got from either was about 1.5 days. As I say, if I am using the A56 outside, I do tend to use a little bit higher brightness, so maybe it lasts a little bit less, but I do more intensive tasks than my S25 Ultra anyways. So it can really vary, but you know where you're going to get 2 days from either of these phones if you're doing anything more than just replying to text. So yeah, it'll last you about a day and a half max, which is I guess enough, and that's probably most of us, we charge our phones at night, you know, when we're going to bed. So it's enough, but it's definitely not up there with other brands. But is there a big difference between the two? No. But what really annoyed me about the A56 was the random signal drops that I got. I've run the same network on both phones, but Exynos modems, they're notorious for signal dropping. If you live in a rural area or work in a steel building, I found this especially annoying when I'm working in a hospital. The Ultra will keep a 5G bar up with its Qualcomm X80, while the A56, it just gives up. You aren't just paying for speed here, you're paying for a phone that actually stays connected to the internet. With Wi-Fi, I only have a Wi-Fi 6 router, and Wi-Fi 7 just isn't widespread enough to really give you a comparison. I mean, these are Wi-Fi 6 speeds in my home, and you can see they're very similar and within a margin of error of one another. There's no problem with ping or anything like that that I've noticed. Both phones are just as good. If you've got a Wi-Fi 7 router, of course, you know that the A56 lacks that capability, but in the UK, you don't really see them anywhere yet. Both phones charge at approximately 45 watts and take just under 90 minutes to reach 100% in the right conditions, that is. They both feel equally warm to me in my hands when the screen is off. If you actually go to use the phone, I find the S25 Ultra actually got hotter to the touch whilst charging. Both of these phones are far behind when it comes to charging speeds compared to, you know, Xiaomi, Honor, OnePlus, Oppo, Huawei, whatever you're thinking of. I mean, they're far behind. I mean, in my recent video where I compared the S25 Ultra to the iPhone 17 Pro Max, I even state there that getting to 80%, they're both pretty much identical and equal. And if Samsung are competing with Apple in charging speeds, you know how far behind Samsung have really fallen when it comes to this. And on that note of being far behind, I mean, the Ultra has that USB 3.2 Gen 1 port, and that's amazing because it supports DisplayPort for DeX and moves files at 10 gigabits per second, which is great. But the A56, it's still using USB 2.0. That is the same speed as the original iPhone from 2007. If you're trying to move a 40 GB video file to your PC, you might as well go out for dinner. You're going to be waiting a while. And this isn't a hardware limitation. This is Samsung intentionally putting a slow pipe in the cheap phone just to make you hate it enough so you upgrade. But these ports, they're just not that expensive anymore. This is Samsung just being petty. Alright, let's talk software, because this is where Samsung really plays God. Both phones run One UI and everything seems to be pretty similar when you're running through it. I mean, the A56 even has good lock, so if you're into your customization and really making the phone feel yourself, there's not that much of a difference between them day to day. But where it really lacks is the Galaxy AI. I mean, here you see Galaxy AI and the full list of features that come with it, but here we get intelligent features. It's quite limited what you can do with it. It really depends. Are you going to be using these things day to day? For me, the main thing that I use in terms of AI features is probably Circle to Search, and both work just as well. I mean, it's Google and Gemini, you can use either way on both phones. So Object Eraser, yeah, it's basic and it works on both. Everything else I don't tend to use, but just know that if you're into note summarization, live translating calls, AI Select and all of that jazz, you're locked away on the A56. This is basically a fancy way of saying this is AI Lite. When it comes to longevity, both phones get adequate updates. I mean, they're pretty much updating at the same time for me almost every time. The A56 is going to get about 6 years of software updates along with 7 years of security updates. The Ultra, it gets 7 years of both. So it's something to think about, but honestly, by 2031, the battery in both of these phones will be redundant anyways. And the Exynos chip in the A56 is going to be screaming for mercy as even simple apps like YouTube get more and more demanding day by day. But it's nice to know that Samsung is finally letting the mid-range stay at the party a bit longer. Alright, let's talk cameras. The Ultra, it's a telescope, 200 megapixels, periscope zoom, the work. In good lightings, both of the phones, they take great photos. In the night, honestly, both are kind of meh. I'll show you some comparisons now so you can see for yourself. If you're going to be cropping into your pics, the 200 megapixel sensor is a godsend, but remember to turn it on before you actually take the pic, because I often forget to do that and wonder why it's blurry when I zoom in. The processing is naturally different given the better chip on the Ultra, but if you're shooting RAW, you just won't notice the difference. Though of course, log videos you can't do on the A56, but I doubt anyone buying this phone was intending on shooting log in the first place. For creators, this is where gatekeeping gets real. The Ultra shoots at 8K 30fps and 4K at 120fps for buttery smooth slow-mo. The A56 is capped at 4K 30, no 4K 60, no 4K 120. If you want to shoot a TikTok or a YouTube short that doesn't look like a potato when you slow it down, the A56 is going to fail you. Even the selfie camera is just gimped. The Ultra gives you 4K 60 on the front. The A56 gives you just enough to look okay on a Zoom call. And Samsung, can we talk about this 5 megapixel macro lens on the A56? This is pure electronic waste. It's only there so the marketing team can say triple camera on the box. Nobody's going to use this. Give us a crappy telephoto instead. And then there's the S Pen. Most people use it for 2 weeks and then forget that it exists until they need to sign a PDF. I mean, how often do I actually use it? As I said, pretty much only when I need to sign a PDF, or sometimes when I'm bored in a lecture or in teaching and I just want to make some notes. It's a £100 plastic stick and a £1,300 phone. But what really matters is the haptics. The A56 honestly feels like a vibrating toothbrush. It's loud, it's buzzy, and it feels cheap. The Samsung S25 Ultra, there's zero delay to the haptics and it feels quite premium. Not as good again as other devices, especially some of the best haptic devices such as the OnePlus 13 or the Pixel phones, which feel fantastic. But these little differences really remind you where that extra money went. So, is the S25 Ultra really worth the extra cash? If you're working in a basement, you're shooting high-end video, or need a screen that doesn't act as a mirror, then yes. But for the average person, this A56 is 80% of the phone for basically 1/3 of the price. It's a massive amount of phone for £245. And if you're going to be spending your savings that you save on something that might actually add more value to your life than some summarized notes and AI garbage, then definitely reconsider your spending choices. For me, I'd say this phone is for 80% of the people and this phone is for 20% of the people. But in reality, what we see outside is probably the other way around. It's really time me and other people start reconsidering where we spend our money when it comes to tech.